this very practical idea of spending time alone with a single child, first benefit is that you can help them feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can keep them from getting lost in the crowd of your family, and you can communicate their value to you, to your family, to the Lord, how important they are.
Today on the podcast, we're actually going to talk about something that, Brett, you really messed up on in parenting. That you really
that could be
did
a
terrible
host of things, Erin. I mean,
you did a terrible job in this. And so we just thought we'd share it with everybody and then just talk about what you've learned from your failures.
Wow. That was sarcastic. That was a little biting, actually.
Aww.
I hope there's a few listeners out there who are going to jump to my defense now and talk about how mean and narcissistic you are, Erin.
Well, okay, maybe you didn't fail at it.
Maybe?
We're going to talk about something that we learned is really valuable as parents. And we kind of learned along the way how valuable it was. And maybe we learned it too because we had so many kids that we realized the necessity of it. That maybe a family with one or two kids doesn't realize how valuable it is simply because of the number of people in the family.
Although, even if you have one kid or two kids, this is still valuable for you.
Yeah.
Because the idea here is spending time alone with each kid.
Mm-hmm.
So you as an individual.
Yeah.
So actually there's probably implications here for parents, for grandparents, spending time with each grandkid. Even maybe those who are working with young people.
Yeah. I mean, we saw that when in youth ministry days. I mean, we still work with youth, but when you were a junior high pastor, when we first got married, and we both had our small groups, and you saw how when I would take one girl out and go get coffee or something, and just having that alone time with her was so valuable then, especially like when we got back together, it just added to our connection.
Yeah. But I mean, we live in an overly busy age.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so clear. I keep saying to people, anyone who will listen to me, I don't think human beings were built for modern life. I don't think this environment, the amount of busyness, the amount of noise, the amount of things that crowd our lives, it doesn't seem like we were designed for this.
I know, I think you're right, because I was listening to something that was talking about Sabbath rest.
The Bible?
No.
Oh, because the Bible talks about that. And I thought you were going to compare me to the wisdom of the Bible. So.
No, I definitely was not going there. But I was listening to somebody talking about Sabbath and how there's been a resurgence in books being written about it, and modern day Christians saying we should Sabbath and we should make this. And we've talked about it too in our own lives. But I think it's a response to the busyness, what you're saying, because we're realizing we are exhausted by the pace of life.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for rest.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I mean, I think anyone who has any kind of idea of what life was, 100 years ago compared to the busyness of life today.
Yeah. So you take the busyness of modern life, and then you add multiple people in a family. So you've got not only your spouse who desperately wants your attention.
You were looking pretty deep in my eyes when you said that.
Sometimes in the podcast, I try to communicate things to you.
Oh, like you desperately want my attention? Is that what you were saying, honey?
That's right.
Oh. Or you were trying to imply that I desperately want your attention.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, okay. Obviously, you have your relationship with your husband or wife, and that requires attention. That requires time. And then you have a kid, and then you have 2 kids, and then you have 3 kids, and then you're like, oh crud, here comes 4. And then and then it was like, all right, here's number 5. I give up. All right. Just keep popping them out. Right?
Imagine people have more than us.
Yeah, no. Of course, it makes me think of Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, who says, you know what it's like to have 4 kids? Imagine you're drowning and someone throws you a baby. And there's a real sense of that, like, right? Especially if you have a lot of kids close together and they're all young, it can be very physically exhausting, right? So you have this challenge of then more people need your attention and want your attention, and those are good things, but it's a busy pace of life. And then you get in that, and you're in busy modern life. You're running around multiple places. Everyone's got all these different needs, and then you think about like, well, I guess it can prevent you from thinking about how these kids in your life are a huge blessing. You know, I mean, I think about Psalm 127. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. The fruit of Erin's womb has been a reward.
For you.
I want to make this real personal here. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, Brett is a warrior. So are the children of one's youth. This is just how you make scripture personal. I'm just modeling for people.
Yes.
So are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. That we have to remind ourselves that children are a blessing, right? We need to cultivate that sense. We need to cultivate that kind of attitude, that kind of posture towards our kids. And so,
especially in a culture that constantly nudges us to think of ourselves as the most important person.
And orient all of life around my desires and my wants. And then these little creatures come into your life and impinge on all of that, and they take away your freedom. No, I'm just kidding.
And then you listen to a podcast like this that tells you to give them individual attention.
And then you feel guilty and you give up. Oh, wait, no, that's not the goal here. The goal here is to give some real practical advice. And I think hopefully there's going to be some really practical advice that we as adults can implement with our kids that we value. So here's what we've learned. Spending time alone helps us as parents to remember that our kids are a gift, and it helps our kids to feel like they're a gift, that we see them as a gift. And so this is so tremendously important because we want our kids to feel valued. And we have 5. We still have 5. You have wanted to give a couple of them up, and I had to fight to keep a couple of them. I won't name which ones that you were, advocating for their release. But the kids can get lost in that shuffle, right? I mean, 5 kids, lots of activity. We are a fairly active family. We're really popular and social. Erin has lost it. Okay, we had to have a moment to pause there. Are you okay, Erin?
I'm okay.
Because apparently my humor is off the charts today.
Sometimes you say the most ridiculous things, and I just am not prepared for it. But I've recovered.
It's so ridiculous that you laugh incessantly.
Oh, Oh, man.
So, I mean, I was being serious and talking about how we need to make our kids feel valued. And
We do.
Our kids get lost in the shuffle, busyness, lots of social things. And so a kid in a family of 2 other kids, other siblings, 3, 4, 5, however many, can just get lost in that busyness.
Well, life just is busy, whether you have 1 child or 10. Not that those homes are identical, but it's just realistically the modern American life. Even with 1 child, you can have every night of the week booked as far as what you have going on.
Yeah, and so this whole idea, this very practical idea of spending time alone with a single child, first benefit is that you can help them feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can keep them from getting lost in the crowd of your family.
Yeah.
And you can communicate their value to you, to your family, to the Lord, how important they are. So that's one of the huge benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a second benefit seems to be the significant conversations you can get in too, because we know that, if we're sitting around the dinner table, we clear our dinner table, literally before we set it, because it needs to be clean.
It's always a mess.
But no, metaphorically though, we also clear the table of all distractions, like no cell phones at the table, no toy, like when the kids were little, no toys at the table. It was food and relationship, because there's such a beautiful picture of the connection between food and fellowship in Scripture.
I was just telling someone, it's funny you brought that up, because I was just telling someone we have the rule, no toys at the table. And there were a couple of reasons for it. One, like we don't want food to get on the toys. But I was saying the other reason is it's the same reason we don't let the phones at the table, because it is a distraction. And part of sitting and eating together is for conversation.
Yeah. So we wanted the kids from earliest of ages to, experience that. And so we'll have significant conversations, but there are times when a kid has something more private that they want to talk about, or something more personal, or you just
have your undivided attention a little bit. Maybe the other siblings.
Yeah, there's not competition. And then sometimes you have other siblings that are more loud and more, aggressive or
vocal.
Not aggressive, assertive, vocal.
Well, you could have a sibling that's more aggressive.
Yeah, well, we've had a couple of those kids too. I won't name anybody in particular sitting in this room, but there are, there's just a number of factors that when you're with a kid alone, it creates some space to have that significant conversation, because they've got your undivided attention. And so that's another value of this. And you push these other things out. You just get to focus on them. It gives you an opportunity to care about the things that they care about. I think back to one specific example of you going to a Marvel movie with Micah, right? And when he was 10, 11, 12, Marvel was just so cool and these movies were so great, and it was an opportunity where you took just you and him, just the two of you spending time alone with one kid to connect, and that led to some significant conversation.
Yeah, and we'll talk about other ways to spend alone time with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a date night together or something like we would call it a lot oftentimes. And that was a time where Mike and I went to dinner, and then we went to a movie, and I knew he wanted to see the new Marvel movie, and it would not be my choice to go see that in the theater.
That is a strong understatement.
But I cared about what he cared about. So I wanted to do something that was fun for him, so that he feels like, oh, mom likes the things that I like because she likes me.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
She takes an interest in what I am interested in because she likes me.
And our friend Shelly Komacheski said, the way she says it, and I love it, is she said, because she took her girls to a concert, her teenage girls, and she went up to the table where they were selling the music and T-shirts or something, and the guy at the table was like, "Oh, I'm surprised you like this music," and she said, "Oh, I don't." And she said, "But I love the people who love this music."
Yeah.
And so she's at the concert with her girls, but that I love the people who love this, so I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. I love that story, Shelley.
I can tell you right now, I do not enjoy spending time at the American Girl doll store.
You don't even know how to say it very well. That's how much you don't like it.
No, I just have to say it really slow to even get it out. No,
but you've been to the American Girl doll store several times.
Multiple times.
Because we have 3 daughters.
Because I like the people that like the American Girl doll store.
So
man.
You've actually had tea there.
Okay, you're not supposed to share that publicly. All right, might as well admit it. Yes, I've had tea at the American Girl doll store.
Yes.
So, no, I think that's just it's good. It's a good reminder, right? To take interest in the things that our kids are interested in.
Yeah.
To communicate your love and care for them, and that they're valued, and that what they enjoy, and that's valuable, and that's why like going to their games and things like that can communicate those kind of things. But all right, so for that to happen though, for us to spend time alone with our kids individually, we have to be intentional.
Yeah.
We just know this from experience. I mean, having 7 people in our family, if we're not intentional about it, it will not happen.
Yeah, which is for us why for the more going on dates with the kids kind of things, like we would call it, going on dates with each other and then spending time alone with the kids too. We had to just very practically, we had to sit, and we would do it Sunday nights, and we'd go over calendar. And so then we would sometimes just look at the week ahead, and that was all we could handle, is just looking at the week ahead. But also we would oftentimes look at the whole month. And then we'd be able to see, okay, have you and I had any time alone to do something like go out to dinner or whatever? And then we would say, okay, what would be some time that I could go do this with Micah, or take Paige to do something or whatever. And so that would give us the time to be intentional, because what we found is that when we didn't plan, you and I found that then it would not happen. And so, but we wanted it to happen. And it wasn't, obviously, you can't make it happen every week, and you can't even
if you love your kids, you can.
And you can't make it happen every month, maybe even. But especially depending on how many kids you have. But you can make it happen. And so your goal is to have time where you are alone with them, so that you can show them you're interested in them. Yeah. And so, but you have to be intentional.
Okay. So we want to give 5 practical ideas.
Okay.
I'm just thinking these 5 might spur on a few more ideas. So, hey, if you get a bonus 6 or 7, you're welcome. Okay. And then one key tip. All right. So 5 practical ideas. So here's idea number 1. And you already mentioned it, but it's the idea of like doing a date with each kid. And so for us, I would take the girls on a date. You would take the boys on a date. And, we thought there's multiple things that are kind of multiple goods that come from something like that. Number 1 is, of course, the spending time alone. Number 2 is then kind of how we got to model for the kids, how to treat them. I especially thought about that with the girls. Like, okay, you're going to go on a date with dad, and, dad's going to treat you the way you ought to be treated. So I can model for you what that, what that looks like before you ever date a filthy guy. And so we
Tell
do date nights.
Tell us how you really feel.
Every guy in the world except for one, a filthy animal. Okay. So There were date nights, and that was typically a meal. We wanted a meal because that's where the conversation happens. That's where you can kind of look at your kid in the eye, and you can really connect with them in significant conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was usually something enjoyable, something fun. We love movies. Our
Mm-hmm.
family loves to watch movies, and so oftentimes going to a movie or it's going on an activity, maybe doing a hike, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So date nights is a good time.
Yeah. And again, you have to be intentional on those, and those don't have to necessarily be a weekly thing. But one way to integrate, just another practical idea of having alone time with kids while having a busy modern American life or having multiple kids, is to have alone time with the kids while you run errands. And so you might have several things you need to get done, and you just decide, okay, I'm going to take one of the kids with me to do that. And I found this to be not only helpful to have them around, but practical, especially when the kids were so young and there were a lot of demands on our time and physically demands on me too, is just to bring them along as we do things. And so I remember one time one of our girls was having a hard time. And this day I was very busy, and we had a friend that had just had a baby, and I needed to go to the grocery store. And then I needed to run by the hospital to see the friend who just had the baby. And then I had to run, I think, to a pharmacy or something too. So there were 3 things I had to do. And you were going to get home in time for me to leave all the kids and go and do these things. And this daughter of ours was having a really hard day. And I thought I should just bring her with me. And even though I was a little tempted, honestly, to just do these things by myself, but I said, why don't you come with me? And I would love for you to just do this stuff with me. So it was funny. We went to the hospital first and saw the baby, which she enjoyed thoroughly. And then we were at the grocery store. And I remember, I'm kind of concentrating on what things, but I'm also we're talking and whatever. But in the grocery store, she had a bad day. She was kind of grumpy all day.
Now, which girl was this? Was this Paige or Ella?
I'm not going to tell
Lexi?
you. And then all of a sudden, I'm pushing the cart, and she locks her arm in mine. And then she said something to the effect of, "This is so fun, Mom." And I'm thinking, we're in the grocery store? Like, I just basically brought her along to run errands. But and her mood had completely changed by this point in the day. And I think just having time, her and I, doing things together, but just having where her siblings weren't around, you weren't around, it was just me and her, changed her whole mood. And so sometimes it's even just being thoughtful in, I'll run these errands, but I'll bring one of the kids with me, because that's not what's normal.
Yeah. And sometimes, we may be tempted to look at those errand runs as like time alone.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes that might be the best thing. Like sometimes, after I watch a few interactions between you and the kids, I'm like, okay, Mom needs errand time. Okay. Or Dad needs errand time. No, but when you don't need that that time alone, man, it's kind of good to have a general rule. Always take a kid with you on an errand. And guess what? Even when they don't want to go. Like there have been plenty of times where, you or I have said, hey, kid, one of the kids, come with me to the store, come with me to go do this. Oh, they wanted to stay home. And, and it's like, oh, no, you're coming with me. And they never regret it. I don't know about you, but they never regret spending time with their dad.
Well, don't you think it communicates with the kids? And I hope our kids would all say that they have felt this, but like we like having them around.
Yeah.
And so I think it communicates that we like you to be with us.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah.
And especially
and we
as they get older.
genuinely do like them.
Yeah, we do. And that's a genuine
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. That
But
they sense, oh, mom loves when I go with her to do stuff.
Yeah. But sometimes, and I want to highlight the fact that you don't always feel that.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning, your kids get on your nerves or they frustrate you or whatever it might be. It might be just because of your own impatience, right? And so getting yourself in the discipline of spending time with them is good, even when you feel frustrated.
Yeah, actually, typically my advice to
I think I say typically I do feel frustrated with them.
No, I was thinking that typically my advice with, a mom who I'm talking to about a discipline thing or a kid who at this stage of life is just driving them a little bit crazy, I will actually suggest that they spend more time with the child one-on-one, which is not your instinct because, of course, when your kids are frustrating you, you don't want to be around them. Now, if you only have little tiny kids and you're hearing me say that and that sounds horrendous, it's true that, of course, you cannot enjoy being around your kids all the time. I mean, everybody knows that. So instead of pushing them away and saying, I need a break from them, sometimes bringing them in closer actually helps with the discipline problem or like I said, with our daughter, kind of a funky mood they're in. Yeah. Sometimes you pull them out of home and family, siblings, give them a break from that. And then you can have a conversation like, why are you upset today or whatever? It gives you the space.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got dates, we've got errands. Like, how about recreation? So just going outside and throwing the football with the kid.
Oh, yeah.
Like our boys would love that. And that was time alone where we could throw the football at each other, or not at each other, to each other. Although sometimes when they got really frustrating, I would throw at them. No, we would, it just gives you that time alone where you can then have conversation even as you're playing. Or you don't even have to have it. Every time doesn't have to be a significant conversation either. I don't want to put that pressure on parents. Yeah. It's just a time alone together. And it was, our boys when they were young, if I went out just to throw the football with them for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, that was just like a treat to them. Yeah. And they loved it. So it could be sports. It could be going on a hike with them, going on a bike ride. I love taking the kids surfing. I love going one-on-one with a kid and taking him surfing. Yeah. So those activities can be largely free. Or once you get the equipment, then so it doesn't have to be an expensive thing. But so thinking of even recreation that you can do.
Yeah. Enjoying life together is kind of the principle. And that can be a 30-minute walk before dinner or after dinner or whatever. So it can be really simple things, but of course, exercising our bodies helps our moods. And then it's fun to do things together. So recreation.
Sometimes it's a board game with just one kid, or like chess is a great game that I've played with the boys one-on-one.
Sometimes it's letting the older sibling or one of the siblings stay up later than the other kids, and so it's a 30-minute card game. You can do that too. And so it's finding, recreation could be all kinds of things. And it can be a short time of just, okay, everyone's going to bed. Hey, I'll let you stay up 30 minutes. Do you want to play cards? And that can be a good connection time too.
Yeah. And it can be intellectual pursuits as well. Maybe I don't know if we'd add that as a bonus, right? But it could be reading a book together with one kid. So you've done that really well with the kids where I'll see you on the couch with one kid reading a book from the youngest of ages, but even as they get older. Our 8th grade boy still loves reading books with mom. He'll sit on the couch with you for hours if you read to him. So reading, it could be even doing devotions together or reading the Bible with one kid or, maybe visiting I remember at one point when we were looking at different churches, and we were visiting some churches, I took one of the kids with me, and part of it was very practical because I think we had a couple of little ones, And so me and Lexi would go to a church, just the two of us, you know? I mean, so it could be all kinds of things, right? Here's a fourth idea, just a meal or a treat. So maybe it doesn't have to be a full-blown date, but just food. And again, we've talked about the connection with food and fellowship. So a meal is such a good opportunity.
Yeah.
One of the best, maybe, opportunities to spend time alone with a kid.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a full-blown meal. You don't have to go big and spend a lot of money or anything like that.
It could be a donut before school, going to the donut shop before school, waking up a little early, or as they get older, of course, every teenager we've had has loved to go to Starbucks. Like if we say, do you want to go get Starbucks? They're like, yes. And so
you support that leftist business? I mean, you just outed yourself right now.
So going to get a coffee before school or right after school or whatever, if they have 30 minutes before they have to be somewhere, say, hey, let's meet. So, this is for older kids too. But yeah, finding little times you could go get a treat or obviously ice cream. No kids say no to ice cream. But if this isn't something you do all the time, then it really is a treat, actually.
Yeah.
And they love it. And it can be just a small thing.
Yeah, and it could be 20 minutes. So this doesn't have to be looked at as, okay, now I've got to spend time alone with this one kid and it's got to be 3 hours, No, it could be these short moments.
Yeah.
And then now this is going to be the biggest one and the most involved one, but your kid traveling with you. That is such a rich opportunity to spend time alone with your kid. And we've done this. I mean, my job has for a long time has been, speaking. And so we got into a habit of about once a year, especially when the kids were younger and, to try and make it just feasible for us to, be able to afford once a year. But it was like once a year, I'm taking each kid on a trip with me, on a speaking trip, on a business trip. And, we'd pick something that was conducive to, where I wasn't speaking 12 times in one day, but where I could spend time with the kids. And so you have the flight to and from, you've got your time in the hotel that you're at, you got your time at the event. I mean, dinner afterwards, so much time one-on-one with the kid. And so that'd be like a mini retreat, that we do the kids. And then you've done the same thing as well. And before you were speaking and you were full-time stay-at-home mom, we would just have to be more intentional with that.
Yeah.
And so we would plan times for you to go away with one kid on maybe a girls' weekend with one of our daughters,
or overnight, and it wasn't always work. Sometimes you would take the kids camping, do an overnight camping. So it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah.
It can be something, if you're on a really limited budget, you can still, drive somewhere within driving distance and camp. Or, kids like sleeping in the car, like at a campsite, sleeping in the car. Kids think that's fun. Adults don't. But so.
And that's why I mentioned the work travel, because I had the flexibility to do that, but the costs were more minimal because my plane ticket is covered by the event host. Our hotel was covered. Our rental car was covered by the event host. So I often had to get a plane ticket for the kid to come out with me.
Yeah.
And so that made it very affordable. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be big and extravagant.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just camping, 20 minutes away from your home or something like that. Or maybe it's just going in the backyard. Well, no, that wouldn't count as travel.
So thinking about ideas, I think one thing that no matter what you choose to do or where you're going or what the alone time is, that for this time, whether it's running errands or doing an overnight thing or going to get a donut in the morning, one tip for this time is that you as a parent put your phone away and that you are as little distracted as humanly possible during this time with your child. And that, I think, not only communicates, I like being with you, it communicates, I prioritize you. And there are times where you are so important that I will push out all the other things and just focus on you.
Yeah, that's where, okay, the first step is spending time alone with each kid. The second part of that might be giving them your undivided attention. Yeah. And this is, I mean, this is something that can just fit right into our view of discipleship, the discipleship of kids. I mean, we read Deuteronomy chapter 6 a lot on this podcast for good reason, right? It starts with verse 4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, right? This important scripture in Israel's history. And of course, Jesus reiterates this as the great commandment. Verse 6 then says, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And it's just the idea that discipleship, the teaching of our kids, to do that diligently means we do it as we go, as we lay down, as we sit. I mean, as we're living life.
Yeah.
And these are just ways of being intentional of living life, and then being intentional about bringing our kids along and living that out together, and then taking those opportunities to just model and to teach and to have significant conversations.
Yeah. It makes me think about how some of my fondest memories of time with our kids, you know, of course, our kids are older now, and 3 out of the 5 don't live here anymore. But a lot of my fond memories with them was time in the kitchen with them when they would help me make dinner. And we just had this basically one day a week, each kid had to help me with dinner. And that was beneficial in many ways. They learned how to cook. All of our kids know how to cook. And that's because we brought them into the kitchen and taught them how to do it alongside us. But also it was typically everyone else is in a different part of the house or playing outside, but the kid had to be in the kitchen with me. And that was a good time just to talk as we're chopping tomatoes and cooking ground beef, that we're talking about life and the day. And so this is time, intentional time with them of just doing life together. And it especially when it becomes a pattern of your life and a regular habit, it's so good and foundational for having a strong relationship where your child knows that you love to be with them, that you like who they are and you like to be with them, that you love time with them.
Well, there you go. That's about as practical as we can be. Spend time alone with each kid.
MAVEN exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.